A flash of arcane energy wreathes the target, and before the magical swirl clears, the blade singer is already upon them, enchanted blade glowing. A swift slash and a tendon is sliced, collapsing the target. The Bladedancer gracefully steps into position, swapping one blade for another, this one serving a far more sinister purpose. Welcome to the Bladedancer build, a spellblade that weaves supporting magic into a devastating arsenal of enchanted blades to slice through every challenge, up close and personal. We'll be using all resources available to us, magicka, stamina, enchantment charges, and quick slots. Not just Bladedancer by name, but also nature, offering a unique playstyle juggling between different weapons, all fueling a character that's versatile and deadly. Rather than use weapons to support our magic, we're using magic to support our weapons. This build is viable for, and tested on, expert difficulty. Breton is our top choice here, offering a lot of bonuses that suit a spellblade style. 50% magic resist is huge to help us survive diving into the thick of combat. A racial spell Dragon Skin for 50% shield, which is a big difference maker for our defense, especially early game when our armor is lacking. And 50 bonus magicka to our pool for the important spells that we'll weave into our swordplay. Their skill bonuses give us a head start in most areas of magic too. Second choice would probably be Dunmer. Their 75% resistance to fire is narrower than the Breton's magic resist, but given the prevalence of Daedra and fire attacks aimed at us, it's roughly equivalent to it on the whole. The racial summon spell is a nice panic button if you want to split aggro, but not really part of our build. Their starting skills are arguably even better for us than Breton though, with a good mix of martial and magic boosts, notably blade, destruction and light armor. The boost to starting skills won't be felt for too long however. Their impact diminishes as you quickly level early game. The magic resist and extra magicka offered by the Breton on the other hand will make a noticeable difference throughout your whole run. Our birth sign will be Lord. Even more magic resist on top of our Breton racial means we are super tanky against magical damage right out the gate. Starting at 65% resistance means it's very feasible to reach 100% if you really wanted to trivialize the game. This birth sign helps our defenses against the main two types we'll face, magical and physical. The extra 15 armor will help us reach the cap of 85, as even full heavy armor brings you only to 75. The alternative would be Mage for a bit of extra magicka, which will help us cast slightly more potent supporting spells. For our specialization, we're going with magic. The tricky thing about spellblade builds is your bonuses need to be somewhat split between melee skills and magic skills. However, as you'll see in the playstyle section, the majority of our damage and power comes from enchantments and spell effects, rather than flat out melee damage. While boosts to skills like Blade would boost our damage, it's nothing compared to unlocking more powerful magic spells to supplement our playstyle. Our major skills include Blade, for obvious reasons, Alteration, Destruction, Illusion, Restoration for our buffs and debuffs, Light Armor so we can protect ourselves and more quickly reach the armor cap. Light Armor rating matches Heavy Armor at 100 skill, so getting there is a priority. The last one is a bit of a flex slot. I'd recommend Athletics to ensure we can move out of danger, get quickly into melee range, or reposition in combat. Acrobatics is another option, mainly to get the dodge ability at level 25. Which is a flavourful addition to the build, though you'll likely get to level 25 easily enough without spending a major skill slot on it. You could go for block, which is worthwhile even without a shield at higher levels. It halves damage before it's further reduced by armour when max. Or lastly Armourer, since the final perk lets you over-repair items, boosting the max defense of your armour and damage of your weapons. Our attribute priorities are Agility and Endurance. Agility boosts damage with daggers and short swords in the remaster, and adds to our max fatigue, which is of course useful for enabling us to attack, power attack, sprint, jump and block without collapsing. Endurance boosts maximum health. We will undoubtedly take hits and want to be able to keep slashing despite them. Willpower and speed would be our next best attributes to boost. Willpower to help our magicka regen in between spell casts. Although willpower regen doesn't kick in if you're chain casting, we'll be firing off a spell and then using our sword until we're ready for the next target, giving our magicka a pause to fill back up. Speed obviously for dodging and repositioning. Never underestimate it, it's such a quality of life improvement to move faster. The most important part of the Bladedancer is unsurprisingly the blades. Melee damage is notoriously lacking in Oblivion, especially in the remaster because it's no longer tied to fatigue levels. It's a good change, but it means we can't exploit boosts of fatigue for damage. So most of our meaningful damage comes from weapon enchantments. The attack speed of short swords comes into play here, as they're essentially just a delivery system for our enchantments. Daggers would apply them even quicker, but the shorter reach becomes a real nuisance and you'll sometimes find yourself hitting nothing but air. One of the main considerations for enchanted weapons is the number of uses they have. Yes, you could max out the damage, but in less than 20 quick swings you'll be empty. For actual practical gameplay reasons, we don't want to have to recharge after every fight. You can get mods to extend the life of charges, otherwise we'll be reliant on Azura's Star and Soul Trap to keep topping up our weapons. Once money is no longer an issue, we could always pay to have them recharged by a vendor. Along with some healing and utility spells, magic for us will mainly be for applying weakness to our enemies, so our weapon enchants are extra potent. We want our blades to do the talking, so rather than have spells with different effects, we'll have different swords for different scenarios. Because we'll be swapping between different weapons with different purposes, it can be handy to have different types of short swords for each, so at a glance you know what you currently have equipped. Lethargy. The first one of these is our crowd control option. Drain fatigue and damage fatigue will very quickly drop our opponents to the floor. Subsequent hits will keep them down for longer. Slice tendons and weak points to take them out to fight, then dance between other targets, dropping them all in turn. Once the fight is entirely yours to control, you can either keep slashing while they're helpless on the floor or switch to our next weapon. Jolt. Next is our main damage dealer, best when an enemy is already on the floor and weakened. 10 points of shock damage and soul trap. We're using shock since that's the element we're setting up with our debuff spell. We're also adding another layer of weakness to magic and shock. This will ramp up our damage to insane levels when stacked on top of the debuff spell we already applied. Silencer. For dealing with enemy magic users, silencing them is an immediate solution. They'll usually pull out their backup dagger, which is nowhere near as threatening. And since they often annoyingly run away when they get low on health, this blade also burdens them so they become encumbered and can't move, making them totally helpless. Corrosion. For particularly dangerous or tanky enemies, it's worth our time swapping to our corrosive blade that in a few swings will break the weapon of our enemy. This will leave them swapping to a weaker backup weapon, or far more likely, simply staring at us harmlessly. Difficulty setting doesn't impact item durability, so it's much quicker to neutralize them this way than to chew through all their health while they fight back. In terms of armor, we'll essentially be in full light armor. At max light armor, this is equivalent to heavy armor, but far lighter, and since weight affects movement speed, we'll be faster this way. I prefer Elven armor as I think it fits the aesthetic of the Bladedancer best, and even though it's not the highest tier armor, we'll still be able to reach the armor cap of 85, with the help of our Lord Birth Sign and some armor enchantments. Once your light armor skill is maxed out and boosting your armor rating, you won't need help from any shield enchantments, so that frees up our enchantment slots. We should have at least one with feather so we can offset the weight of carrying multiple swords. Then we can load up on extra magicka, endurance, willpower, or even fortify speed. I've swapped the Elven boots for Mithril boots because I think they look better, but the main addition here is swapping out the Elven helmet for a unique hood. This is the Blade Turn hood. It offers a great amount of shield, which is of course directly equivalent to armor rating, resistance to normal weapons, even further reducing the damage that gets through, and reflect damage as the cherry on top. You get it from Sundercliff Watch during the Mehrunes Razor quest. The guy right at the end, Drothan, drops it along with a good enchanted robe. It's a leveled item, so it has more powerful enchantments at higher levels. I do recommend the auto-leveling items mod, so you don't have to purposefully wait, but even from level 5 onwards, it's better than an Elven helmet, since by then it has 7% shield, along with the other bonuses. Once you hit levels 10, 15, or finally 20, it's far superior. It also gives us the proper spellblade look, a lot like the hood and armor combo that the battle mages wear around the university. Another unique item to look out for is the Elven chest piece, Birthright of Ascalon. Since we want to wear an Elven cuirass anyway, this one comes with 50 extra magicka, which is a huge amount, same as a max sigil stone, and 5 agility as a nice bonus. You can buy this from the Gilded Carafe once your mercantile reaches 50. We're steering away from spells being our main damage dealers, but that doesn't mean they aren't a key part of the build. There are a few effects we need to enable our playstyle, and these have been reflavoured to suit the build. Remember kids, flavour is free. Wreathe. Our opener to almost every fight should be this one. Weakness to magic so all our weapon enchantments are amplified. Weakness to shock for when we want to swap to our zapping blade. And light so our targets are easy to see and track in the frequently dark places. It's fairly cheap given how much it multiplies our effectiveness, and lasts long enough that by the time we need to apply it to a new enemy, we'll have regenerated the mana for it. Smoke Bomb. This is for disengaging a tricky fight to escape or reposition. Firstly, drain speed 100 points in a 15-foot area around us. Because NPC detection is based on their speed, dropping it to 0 will drop aggro and make them lose track of us. Then invisibility on self to make sure those further away from us also drop aggro. Finally, we're adding light to enemies within that initial 15 foot, just for the aesthetic of looking like a stunned or dazzled effect on them. It also helps us figure out when the effect of the smoke bomb has worn off when we see the light disappear. We can use this offensively as well as defensively. Stun the opponent, then lay into them while they're disorientated. Haste. For when we need to be extremely quick or maneuverable, we'll boost our acrobatics, athletics and speed, along with feather. This is especially helpful if we have a lot of room to move, lots of enemies to kite, or need to gain the high ground, likely in many Ayleid ruins. Because of Feather, we can also use this when we're weighed down by loot and encumbered, so we can still fast travel to a vendor. Halt. We often want to lock a group of enemies in place, especially melee enemies, so we can engage them one at a time without getting overwhelmed. We can do this by draining their strength and burdening them. Depending on what equipment they're carrying, they'll either be slowed to a crawl or totally stuck in place. This makes our job of dancing between them even easier. Revitalize. If we take a few too many hits, we'll want to top off our health with some healing. It's more mana efficient to have it spread over a longer duration. Channeling. We won't usually need to pre-buff before fights, because we want to open with Breathe. But if we know there's a tough one coming up, we can channel our energy to boost our stats, focusing on boosting our core resources for that extra edge. We should be careful of boosting fatigue though, because if you're at 0 fatigue when it drops, you'll fall to the floor. Now we've looked at all the elements that make up the build, you can see how it all comes together for our gameplay loop during combat. Open up with the Wreath spell on the biggest clump of enemies, which will make our weapon enchantment super effective. Then we close the distance, drawing whichever blade in our arsenal is best suited to the situation. Oftentimes starting with Lethargy is the best bet, since it almost immediately neutralizes the threat, and you can bounce between multiple targets if needed. It also buys time to swap to a second choice of blade, usually Jolt for big bursts of shock damage to finish them off. We can then call upon our spells for additional support if needed, either backing out safely from a dangerous spot with Smoke Bomb, rooting everyone in place if the fight is starting to look messy with Halt, or healing back up with Revitalize. Juggling between our weapons should solve most encounters. Once you get comfortable with blade dancing, you can speed it up by quickly holding block after an attack to cancel the end animation of the swing, then hitting your hotkey for the next weapon. Speaking of hotkeys, your quick slots should look something like this. Starting off with your favourite blade options, I've gone for Lethargy, Jolt and Silencer. Then our main weakness spell, Wreathe. In slot 5 I've got Smoke Bomb, then a potion if we need a sudden burst of magicka, then Halt for some more crowd control, finally Revitalize for self-protection. Once our build is fully online, we won't have too much to fear from physical or magical damage, and we'll have a fun and effective way of dealing with every enemy. But because we rely so much on enchantments and weakness spells, we'll need access to an enchanting table and spellmaking table as soon as possible. So while I usually work through the Mages Guild until you naturally get to the university, this is a good build to shortcut that by heading to Frostcrag Spire. In order to afford the Mage Tallow candles early, we need a quick way to make gold. The arena is good for that, and we can already see how the thread of narrative might dictate how we play our Bladedancer, leading to a satisfying and immersive playthrough. Talania was born and raised in High Rock, the heart of the Breton Empire. Being from a highborn family, expectations were already great for her early on. She began training young, initially with the Battle Mage cohorts, but upon discovering her aptitude for agile swordplay to add to her inherent magical abilities, she soon set her sights on joining the Bladedancers, an elite group of combatants tasked with taking on only the gravest threats that face her people. Beyond just the petty infighting of warring kingdoms, the Bladedancers are tasked with taking down the most supernatural foes. After a grueling training regime, Talania, along with the other candidates, are carted off to Cyrodiil, there to be thrown into a trial by fire in the Imperial Arena. Only after proving themselves can they officially take their title as Bladedancers. Talania overcomes this challenge using the best spells in her repertoire, some picked up even in the days between bouts, being one to always seek self-improvement, along with, of course, the finest blade she has, a gift for saving a local family, along with footwork, parry and ripostes from basic training. Here, with no mere training swords, but cold hard steel aimed at her neck, she learns the value of the dragon scale protection magic passed down through her bloodline. With the privilege of victory as Bladedancer comes the honour of access to Frostcrag Spire, a bastion within Cyrodiil from which to rearm and strike out against the threats to mortal lives. Talania continues arcane studies, joining the Mages Guild in the nearby town. Study with the mages continues, bringing her face to face with dangerous necromancers and vampires, while also growing her magical powers and teaching her effects to implement into her deadly dance. Throughout Talania's journey across the towns of Cyrodiil, she feels a threat looming. Rumours of gods and demons, cults and murder. Her work for the mages also brings her path to cross again with the Fighters Guild. Having honed her magical prowess, she decides it's time to show her peers how to truly use the blade. Shortly after this, she sees smoke on the horizon, Kvatch. She arrives to find the devils of Oblivion spewing forth. The ash landing on her shoulder is the only rallying cry she needs. This is what she was bred for. The demons and devils that most mortals are not prepared to face. Talania, however, bears her enchanted blades, feels the magic coursing through her, and starts her true journey into the Oblivion crisis. Thanks for watching, smash subscribe, see you on the next one.